Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami Stackelhouse, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with fibro fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhouse, and this is episode 147. Now, I have to be honest with you all. I almost skipped recording a new episode this week. I've been dealing with some bad vertigo, and I wasn't sure that I would actually be up to it. But then I realized that that's exactly why I needed to record an episode. About 60 to 70% of all fibromyalgia patients also deal with dizziness. So there's a good chance that you have experienced this too. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about what causes that vertigo, that dizziness, and some of the things you can do to help with that. So for our purposes today, I'm going to divide that term, dizziness, into two groups. The first is lightheadedness. This is where you feel like you might pass out, right? The second is vertigo. This is where you feel like the world is moving even when you're holding still. And that's what I've been dealing with. Now, there are a bunch of different causes for both of these things. In fibromyalgia, I would say that the lightheadedness, that I'm going to faint feeling, is usually due to things like orthostatic hypotension or postural hypotension. This is when your blood pressure drops when you stand up. I think almost everybody in the world has experienced this at one point or another, where you stand up quickly from a chair and you get a little lightheaded and you feel like you might faint, and then you're good to go. Or you bend over and let the blood flow get to your head, and then you're good to go. That is the orthostatic hypotension or postural hypotension. Another cause of lightheadedness that I see so often in fibromyalgia is something called POTS, P-O-T-S, and that stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. In this case, your heart begins to beat faster when you stand up. That's what tachycardia means, a fast heart rate. So they're kind of similar, but a little bit different. And I do see those quite often with fibromyalgia. And we are going to eventually, when I get to it, an episode on POTS, because it is not very well known, but yet affects so many fibromyalgia patients. So we will eventually do an episode on that. But today I want to talk about vertigo. I want to talk about the thing that I've been dealing with for the last week and a half. This is where you feel the world is spinning, even when you're holding still. So you could think of motion sickness, like getting sick to your stomach in the car or on a boat or on a carnival ride, where you just have that sickness, that motion sickness, making you feel nauseous. Vertigo feels exactly like that, but when you're holding still. You're lying flat on your back, you're not moving, the world's not moving, the room's not moving, but you still feel like you're on a boat. It just feels terrible. And I have to tell you, when this happened to me, I felt so sick. There was a little part of my mind that thought, this is so ridiculous to feel this sick when nothing's happening. It's all in my inner ear. And the biggest part of me felt like, I can't even feel ridiculous because I feel so sick. Now, the first time that this happened to me was a couple years ago. I had gone to New York City for the premiere of the fibromyalgia documentary, Invisible. And the day of the premiere, I woke up, went to get out of bed like normal, and felt like I was going to fall right out of bed. It was like all of a sudden I woke up on a boat that was rocking in the ocean and laid back down. And oh my goodness, I was so sick that day. I couldn't even get up and go to the bathroom without throwing up because there was so much motion sickness, even though the room was not moving. So I actually missed the premiere, which was super, super sad. And one of the reasons why we held the Portland premiere later that year. So if you haven't seen Invisible, make sure you go to today's show notes. There will be a link where you can go out and watch that. It's available on a couple of different platforms and it's available around the world. So today's show notes is fibromyalgiapodcast.com/147. So that was the first time. This last time I was at my chiropractor's office. I was getting a massage. I went to get up from the massage table, felt super, super dizzy, laid back down, took a minute, and then got up and I was okay. Right after my massage, I went to go see the chiropractor. And as he was adjusting my neck, as he was turning my head left and right and all the things that you do to adjust your neck, it happened again, and I could not get the world to stop moving. It was horrible, just like in New York City. Now, I want to be super clear. The chiropractor did not cause this. I will explain the actual condition that I have, BPPV, but it was the motion of my head. I could have done it to myself just by moving my head around. And as sick as I was at the chiropractor's office, most likely I would have woken up the next morning with it, just like I did in New York. So it was actually a really good thing that I was at the chiropractor's office because he could help treat what was going on. To give you a little bit of background, you have something in your body called the vestibular system. And this is part of your inner ear. And there are 3 sort of half circle canals, like little tubes inside the bones in your ear. And these tubes are placed in the 3 different planes of motion. So if you think about all the possible ways you could move, left, right, up, down, bending forward, bending backwards, all of those planes of motion have this little tube in your ear that notices that, right? So if you think about like your cell phone that has the gyroscope or whatever to help it know which way is up, right? If you've ever used the Level app, if you've got an iPhone, there's a Level app, or the Compass app is a little bit different, but it's in that same area where you can see a level. It knows whether you're tipped forward, tipped backwards, left, right, up, down. And you have the same kind of a thing in your inner ear. And normally, that's what helps you keep your balance, right? So if you see somebody walking a tightrope, they have trained their inner ear very well to hold their balance. And with fibromyalgia, there hasn't been a lot of study on vertigo and fibromyalgia combined. I did some searching before I popped on here to record this for you, and there really isn't a lot. So there may be additional things happening with fibromyalgia that make this more common for us. But basically, your inner ear isn't working right when you have vertigo. Now, in my case, I had something called BPPV, and that stands for benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. Outside of fibromyalgia, this affects about 20% of the population at some point, and women just slightly more than men. It's about 60% women, 40% men, and does usually happen at an older age. The average age of somebody with BPPV is between 51 and 57. And yep, I fit right in between those numbers. So there you have it. The other thing that I've learned about BPPV is that once you have it once, you're very likely to have it again. So what is BPPV? This is where calcium crystals in your inner ear get into a place where they're not supposed to be, and they sort of wreak havoc. They move around inside those canals I was talking about in your vestibular system, and they make your body think that it's moving when it's not. So you could imagine one of those bubble levels that has the liquid with a bubble in it. And you know how when you move it back and forth in different ways, the bubble moves, right? Well, that's kind of what happens in your ear, except in my case with BPPV, there was something in there moving that bubble, even though I wasn't moving. Terrible. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how awful I felt. So basically, evil calcium crystals, right? And the reason I said earlier that it was a good thing I was at the chiropractor's office because he could treat it right away, there's actually a maneuver called the Epley maneuver where they move your head in different directions to get those calcium crystals back where they belong, or at least out of the spot that's causing a problem. And you actually feel better pretty quickly. So that was excellent. And also, I had kept a medication in my purse on hand because, like I said, once you have it once, you can have it again. And so I always carry that with me. So I was able to take the medication. He did the Epley maneuver on me, and I was finally able to go home. I had my husband come pick me up because I did not feel safe driving. And, kind of went from there. So that's one of the things that can cause vertigo are these evil calcium crystals wreaking havoc in your inner ear. Another cause that is similar is something called Ménière disease or Ménière syndrome. And this is generally caused by an increase of pressure in your inner ear. Again, it's messing with that fluid in your inner ear and making you feel like things are moving when they're not. Now, some of the different symptoms with Meniere's is you can actually have hearing loss, either temporarily or depending on the condition and how severe it is. This could be long-term hearing loss. It can cause vertigo, that moving when the world's actually not moving. It also can cause ringing in the ear or a feeling of pressure or fullness. If you've ever had an ear infection, I don't have Meniere's, but I imagine that some of those feelings are very similar as to having ear infections. I had a lot of ear infections as a kid, which is probably partly why my vestibular system is kind of messed up, but that is the symptoms of Meniere's. Now, this has some similar symptoms, but a different cause. This can actually affect people of all ages, where BPPV tends to be someone in their 50s. Even kids could develop Meniere's. There is also something called vestibular hypofunction. And if we break those words apart, we're talking about the vestibular system, right? That system in your inner ear that helps you balance, and hypofunction, hypo meaning low, and function, right? So that is just a fancy way of saying that your inner ear balance isn't working as well as it should be. I have something called unilateral vestibular hypofunction. And again, breaking that word apart, una means one. So that means one side of one ear doesn't work as well as the other ear. And I'm not talking about hearing. I'm talking about that inner ear, that vestibular system, your balance. And knowing that, it's been really interesting the last week and a half as I've been dealing with this. It's very, very clear that it is my left ear that is the problem, because if I lay on my left side, I feel like the world is spinning. If I roll over on my right side, everything's fine. If I turn my head to the left quickly, then I have dizziness and vertigo, where if I turn my head to the right, it's not a problem at all. So very clearly, there's a problem on one side that isn't there on the other, and that's what unilateral means. So unilateral vestibular hypofunction. There's also something called vestibular migraine. So if you're someone who gets migraines, but then you also get vertigo with those migraines, that actually could be a vestibular migraine. You can even have the vertigo, the dizziness, the room is spinning feeling without the headache, with a vestibular migraine. And when I was going through physical therapy for all of this, which I'll talk about in a minute, my physical therapist really felt like I had been dealing with three things all at once. The BPPV, which is that sudden onset at the chiropractor, waking up in New York, where all of a sudden everything is moving and I can't make it stop. So BPPV, but also she felt like I had unilateral vestibular hypofunction, so it was already not working very well. And she felt like I had also experienced some vestibular migraines. There have been many, many times where I feel like that vertigo, that dizziness, the ringing in my ears, all of the things that you would experience with these conditions, but with a migraine. And it can be really tricky to figure out what's what. So it can be really, really helpful to see somebody who really knows about this and who can help with that. So the answer to a lot of these is yes, you can have some medications. I am currently taking 2 medications to help with the vertigo. One is a patch that goes behind my ear that is for motion sickness. It's the kind of thing you'd wear if you were going on a cruise and get seasick, right? You'd wear a patch. Or if you were going into surgery, but maybe anesthesia makes you sick to your stomach, this is the patch that they would give you for that as well. This happens to be a 3-day patch. So I put it on and it lasts for 3 days and then I put a new one on. The other thing that I used prior to the patch was just over-the-counter Dramamine, something called meclizine. And that is also used for motion sickness. So that's what kind of slows the world down and makes it stop spinning so I don't feel like I'm on a boat all the time. And then the other medication that I take is something called ondansetron, or Zofran is the brand name, and it's an anti-nausea medication. Things like promethazine or phenergan, that is another one that is often used for this, for the nausea that comes with it. And most of the time, I feel like if I can keep the vertigo steady, if I can keep the world from spinning, then I don't get nauseous. But both medications help with that. So that is an option. Medication is an option. However, they have found that the more you use medication, the longer it takes for you to fix what's wrong. Your body has to get used to balancing itself again. And the medications make it so you don't have to do that. So medication can be used more in an acute situation. So like at the chiropractor's office when I'm trying not to throw up everywhere, that's a good use of medication. But once things get calmed down, you need something else. You need to reteach your body how to balance. And I'm saying balance, but that balance also means keeping the world from spinning. So it's not just a matter of not falling down, although that is part of it. It also is balance, like knowing when the room is still versus knowing when the room is moving, like you're on a boat. So once things have calmed down, we want to do something called vestibular rehabilitation therapy, or VRT, vestibular rehabilitation therapy. Now, for me, I did this through a physical therapist. I actually did a search looking for physical therapists near me who handled vestibular issues and found a really, really great one. And a lot of the work that you do in vestibular rehabilitation is just retraining your brain, retraining your inner ear, retraining your body for what's stable. So some of the exercises are things like looking at one spot on the wall, keeping your eyes on it, and then moving your head up and down like yes, and moving your head left to right like no. And that can make you very dizzy. And so some of my exercises, I started off sitting down, not moving my head very fast or very far. And then as I was able to move my head farther, faster, I also worked with those exercises standing up. She actually had me standing in a corner so that if I fell, there was only one direction I could go. But you can also do it standing up, holding onto the back of a chair or a counter, or having that where you could touch it if you needed to, right? Trying not to touch it, but if you need it to, it's there. Because the idea is that we're going to trigger the symptoms so that our body gets used to them. It's a way of stabilizing in spite of the input you think you're getting, right? And one of the things that I learned from her is that your body has several different ways that it balances. Yes, there's your inner ear. That's a huge, huge part of it. But you also stabilize yourself visually. So if you've never done this, pick a friend and try this out. Stand on one foot with your eyes open, and then stand on one foot with your eyes closed. I would bet that there's a good chance that your balance is not near as good when your eyes are closed. That is this vestibular hypofunction, where with your eyes closed, all you have to rely on is your inner ear and your body. You don't have that visual stabilization. And so that is part of the clue that your inner ear isn't working quite as well. So those are actually some of the exercises that we do. We get better at it by doing it. So we practice those exercises that might make us a little bit dizzy or give us a little bit of vertigo so that we can get used to it and have our bodies get used to alternate inputs. So for instance, some of your joints help with balance, and your body can start to pay more attention to those maybe than your inner ear or your eyesight as part of it, right? So there are a lot of different kinds of exercises that can be done if you're experiencing vertigo. The other thing that can be done is that Epley maneuver that I was talking about. Now, this is not going to help you if you have Ménière's or if you are experiencing just ordinary vestibular hypofunction. Those things are not caused by a particle in your ear that can be manipulated. But if you have BPPV that's caused by those calcium crystals, then yes, the Epley maneuver can be extremely helpful to get those crystals back where they belong. Now, another thing I wanted to add in on this in terms of vestibular rehabilitation is whole body vibration. There was a study done back in 2021, so just a few years ago, where they had 3 groups of people who are experiencing vertigo. One of them, the control group, just did the regular rehabilitation exercises with the physical therapist or whoever. One of the groups also used whole body vibration. And we have an episode on whole body vibration if you want to take a look at that. We will have a link to that in today's show notes. Just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/147, and I'll have a link where you can see the study I'm talking about, but also a link where you can learn more about whole body vibration. We're also working with a company, T-Zone Vibration, to give you special discounts on their whole body vibration machines. So if you're interested in that, go check out that episode, and the links and the discount codes are all in there. So they had the group that was doing whole body vibration, and then they had a third group that was doing something else. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it was, but they were doing the vestibular rehabilitation exercises and something else. And the group that did the best, that recovered the quickest, was the group that also was using whole body vibration. Now, whole body vibration, just a quick summary if you're not familiar. These are you might hear them called vibe plates or vibration plates. There are a bunch of different companies out there, but when it comes to whole body vibration for fibromyalgia, the ones you want to use are the ones that move left to right. So think of like a teeter-totter. One side goes down, the other side goes up. And it just does that back and forth super fast. And the reason that this is better for people with fibromyalgia is it's a lot more gentle. It simulates walking, right? That's what your body does with walking. You kind of move left, right, left, right. And so it does tend to be better for people with fibromyalgia. And that motion of the vibration plate definitely helps with training your body again how to balance. So, as I wrap up, just to kind of recap everything we talked about, 60 to 70% of fibromyalgia patients also deal with dizziness. And in general, for today, we talked about dizziness being two groups. One being lightheadedness, where you might feel faint, and that is generally caused by things like orthostatic hypotension or POTS. And that has a very different treatment than the second group, which is vertigo, which is where the world feels like it's moving even when you're holding still. You'll feel like you're on a boat or a train, but you're just in your house and nothing's moving. You just feel like things are moving. And when it comes to vertigo, there are several different things that can play into that. BPPV, which is benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, which affects 20% of the world's population, primarily women in their 50s. And that's the one that's caused by the calcium crystals in your inner ear. There's also Ménière Disease or Ménière syndrome, which is increased pressure in your inner ear. It can cause hearing loss, vertigo, ringing in your ears, and a feeling of pressure or fullness, and that can affect people of all ages. We also talked about unilateral vestibular hypofunction, or just vestibular hypofunction, which again, breaking down those words, it's your vestibular system. Your inner ear is not functioning well. It's functioning at a low level. And unilateral meaning one side has a problem more than the other. The other thing we talked about briefly was vestibular migraine. This affects about 3% of the population, so it is considerably less common. But if you know you have headaches and migraines, it's something you may want to ask your neurologist about, vestibular migraine. And then we talked about vestibular rehabilitation therapy as a way to begin recovering from some of these things. Now, some of these, like BPPV, they don't necessarily last all that long. It might just be a few weeks. The last time this happened to me, I needed to use medication for a few weeks, and then I did the physical therapy exercises, and that helped me recover fully. And I haven't had to take any medication for this for the last, almost the whole time. I only took it for a couple of weeks right after I had the episode. This time I am still taking medication because this only happened a week and a half ago, but I can already tell that that is getting much, much better. I can go longer between times with my medication, and eventually I'll stop that too. So again, we're going to go back to the vestibular rehabilitation therapy because that is really what helps you recover. The medication long-term for some of these conditions actually can keep you from recovering. So keep that in mind. And yeah, I'll just kind of keep you guys posted on how it goes. I'm pretty much back to living a normal life this week, doing my recording today. I feel like I've got more brain fog than I usually do. And I don't know if that's because of the medications that I'm taking or if it's because of the vertigo and the nausea, because that'll do it too. But I don't feel like the world is moving quite so much, which is a very, very blessed thing. So let's go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to share today's listener shout out with you. This is from Beatrice in Luxembourg. I was emailing her following up about the consultation she had with one of my students. I always check in with people after those because, of course, they are students. And if there's anything I need to be teaching or instructing or helping them improve, I want to know that. And she said that her coaching consultation was amazing. She says, I felt understood and filled with hope and really can't wait to start working with Lauren. I liked her approach and the way she listened. She also pointed out a new thing that I didn't even know existed. And the plus side I didn't expect was that, like me, she has a special needs kid. So I feel even more heard. Thanks for making it possible. And I had asked her if it was okay to share her name and country, and she says, please do. I hope someone in Europe will use it as a sign to start the journey themselves. So there you have it. That's your sign from Beatrice to try this yourself. And I wanted to share her comments for a couple of reasons. One is it really doesn't matter where you live. We have got coaches that can help you no matter where you are. We do have coaches who are all over the world, students and coaches all over the world, in Europe, in New Zealand, in, of course, US and Canada, South America, literally all over the world. And so wherever you are, there will be somebody who can match up with your time zones and work with you. All of our coaches do work virtually, so we work by phone or over the computer using things like Zoom or WhatsApp. Some coaches do. And so honestly, it doesn't matter whether you're near or far from your coach. But the biggest thing is that you match up with a coach that you can relate to. Like Beatrice was saying here, she has a special needs kid and her coach has a special needs kid. So there's a whole nother level of understanding beyond just we all have fibromyalgia too. And we do all have fibromyalgia too. So if you need to feel heard, if you need to feel understood, if you need some hope, then I highly encourage you to take a look at our Find a Coach page and schedule a consultation. We've got scholarship consultations, which are free at this time, and those are pretty limited. They go pretty quick, but we also have student coaches, which are at the lower end of the rate spectrum. They are the lowest cost because, of course, they're still students. They're still learning, all the way up to coaches who have been doing this for years. And occasionally you can also schedule consultations with me. Just depends on how busy I am and whether my calendar is full. So if you're interested in scheduling that consultation, go to findafibrocoach.com. You'll fill out that application, choose the type of coach you think you want to work with, and then you will be able to see their pictures and their bios and pick the coach that feels like the best fit for you. All right, we're going to go ahead and leave it there for today. I will see you all back here next time. And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhouse. For daily doses of hope, inspiration, and practical advice, come hang out with me on Facebook. Visit facebook.com/fibrocoach to find my personal coaching page and connect with me directly. To find the show notes, additional resources, or to schedule a consultation with me or one of my coaches, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com.